You're about to find out why Theodore Roosevelt is the reason you were able to watch football this Thanksgiving, why a springtime of revolution turned into a winter of despair, and how a single three-letter suffix holds the key to unlocking the entire history of the modern world. Welcome to the Prism of Isms. This episode is coming out on Cyber Monday. I do have a small store on Teachers Pay Teachers with a bunch of resources that are 25% off today and tomorrow, December 1st and 2nd. You just need to use the code CYBER25 at checkout to get 25% off anything in my store and quite possibly the whole rest of TPT. Did you know that I have a book on Amazon called Success Planner for History Students? For my podcast listeners, if you'd like a copy for $5 off, which is $9.95, message me through my website, aphistoryhelp.com. And if you're among the first 25 people requesting a book before January 1st, I'll arrange to send you a copy within the United States, and that's quite a discount. Come on in, students. We are about to start another episode of the AP History Help podcast. This is episode 51. And while it's heavy on vocab, we're going to have fun with it. And we're going to put these words into context and find out just why you should care so much. But first, I want to start today by saying I hope everyone had a really happy Thanksgiving. And since this episode is dropping just a few days after the holiday, I'm still in that spirit of gratitude. I am genuinely thankful for you, my listeners, the teachers who recommend this podcast, and the students who are putting in the hard work every single week. History is not just about dates and dead guys. It's about understanding the human story. And I'm grateful I get to help you study that story. Today we're going to do a deep dive, and we are tackling a linguistic heavy hitter, the suffix, specifically the suffix ism. Now, grammatically speaking, this suffix forms nouns that denote a system of belief, doctrine, or theory, like feminism or socialism. It can refer to a characteristic behavior like heroism, or even a specific practice like plagiarism. In AP history, whether you are taking Euro, World, or US, isms are the categorization tools we use to bundle up complex eras. They are the mental shortcuts for understanding how people governed, how they made money, and how they view the universe. So grab your notebooks. We are going to look at the political, economic, and artistic isms that you need to know to ace that exam. Let's start with the big ones, how we rule and how we trade. If we look back to the Middle Ages, we see feudalism. This is one of the first ones that you probably learned about in AP World. This was the system of government and land ownership where vassals held the land and serfs worked it. It was rigid, but as nations began to form, power started to consolidate, which leads us to absolutism. This is exactly what it sounds like, a system where a monarch has literally absolute power. Think Louis XIV of France saying, "I am the state."
L'État, c'est moi.
But history, it's a pendulum. And that swing away from absolutism gave us the Enlightenment and a weird hybrid known as enlightened despotism. This is different from absolutism because it was secular in nature. These monarchs like Frederick the Great or Joseph II of Austria used absolute power to organize the state from top to bottom, often for the betterment of people rather than just divine right. Whether it's current events or history, often the answer to why a country or leader did something is follow the money. So I'm happy to say that we're going to do just that. We're going to follow the money. In the age of exploration, the dominant ism was mercantilism or mercantilism. This is where countries sought to increase their holdings and focused on exporting goods rather than importing them. It was all about hoarding gold, silver, and anything else that was considered valuable. But then came the Industrial Revolution and the rise of capitalism, an economic system where individuals retain control of capital. Capitalism created wealth, but it also creates disparity. And whenever you have a massive gap between the rich and the poor, you get a reaction. Enter socialism and communism. Socialism is a system where the economy is managed solely by the government. And communism takes it a step further. It's a form of government and economic management that gives absolute power to the Communist Party. Finally, in the 19th and 20th centuries, we see the rise of intense identity politics. We have nationalism, the idea that people of the same heritage or ethnicity should be self-governed in their own state, or simply extreme pride in your nation or country, putting it above all others. And its scary cousin, fascism, extreme nationalism where citizens work entirely for the benefit of the state. Mussolini was famous for imposing the idea that the state was more important than the people in it.
The state comes before everything else, including them.
And totalitarianism, where the state has absolute or total power and the individual lives only to serve the state. Now, before we get to some music, that's right, I have a song for you. We have to talk about the main event, the heavyweight championship of the 19th century. We just defined a lot of isms, but in the post-Napoleon world, specifically after 1815, European politics really boiled down to a cage match between two opposing worldviews, conservatism and liberalism.
In the right corner is conservatism, and in the left we have liberalism.
Now, I want it to be clear here. These terms meant something very different from today and something very specific in the 1800s. Team conservatism, on the right, we have team conservatism. This was the old order. After Napoleon was defeated, the monarchs of Europe met at the Congress of Vienna. Their captain was Austrian Prince Clemens von Metternich. More on him later. Their goal? Stability. They believed that monarchs were the only legitimate rulers and that rapid change, like the French Revolution, only led to chaos and the guillotine. They wanted to hit the rewind button on history, like to conserve or save history, right? Conservatism is to conserve or to keep it the way it's always been. On the left corner, we have Team Liberalism, which was the new idea. These were usually middle-class bourgeoisie. They didn't necessarily want democracy for everyone. That's radicalism, which called for things like universal voting, horrors. But the liberals wanted written constitutions. They wanted religious toleration. They wanted a government limited by law, not a king who could do whatever he wanted. They wanted change. They were more liberal, looking for flexibility. Now, this wasn't a debate in a parlor. This was a series of violent conflicts. The conservatives created a system called the Concert of Europe. Think of it as a dictator support group. If a liberal revolution started in one country, the other conservative countries would send in armies to crush it. So here are two specific examples you can use in your FRQs, specifically LEQs and DBQs. First, the Carlsbad Decrees of 1819. In the German states, because it wasn't Germany yet, in the German states, university students started getting excited about liberalism and nationalism. The idea that people of the same heritage should be self-governed. They wanted a united Germany. Metternich wasn't having it. He pushed through the Carlsbad Decrees, which effectively censored the press and dissolved student fraternities. It was a total crackdown on free speech to keep conservative peace. A second example is the revolutions of 1848. My AP Euro kids, you need to know these. This is a big one, sometimes called the springtime of the peoples. In 1848, the tension finally snapped. Revolutions broke out in France, Austria, Prussia, and Italy all at once. For a moment, it looked like Team Liberalism had won. Monarchs were fleeing the palaces or promising constitutions left and right. But the victory was short-lived. The liberals and the radicals started fighting each other, usually over economic issues like socialism. The split allowed the conservative armies to regroup and crush the rebellions one by one. So if you get a question on this era, remember the 19th century was a tug of war and not an easy victory, right? It was back and forth. The conservatives, like Metternich and friends, they won the battles of 1848 by using military force, but the liberals eventually won the war because by the turn of the century, constitutions and parliaments were popping up everywhere. Now, speaking of rhythm and rhyme, I actually used some AI tools to help me synthesize these concepts into a song. I think this captures the flow of history pretty well. It traces the timeline from philosophers to the factories. The song is it is a minute and 58 seconds. And so bear with me. I want you to listen to it and give me your feedback on this. Now, you can also find this song with a lyric video on YouTube, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I had a lot of fun putting that video together. You can just go right to my YouTube channel, which is AP History Help. So here's the song called The Prism of Isms.
Yo, peep the pages, ancient ages, knowledge schism. Philosophers rage, new stages, call it Platonism. Old heads, new bread, feudalism. King's decree, whole globe agree, absolutism. Ism after ism, yeah, the world keeps spinning. Mental prism, a new paradigm beginning. Ism after ism, ain't no losing, only winning. History's rhythm, the story they've been penning. Ism after ism, yeah, the world keeps spinning. Mental prism, a new paradigm beginning. Ism after ism, ain't no losing, only winning. History's rhythm, the story they've been penning. Yeah. Church bells chime, sacred time, mysticism. Divine right, endless fight, theological schism. Trade routes bloom, economic boom, mercantilism. Gold stacks higher, hungry eye, colonialism. Ism after ism, yeah, the world keeps spinning. Mental prism, a new paradigm beginning. Ism after ism, ain't no losing, only winning. History's rhythm, the story they've been penning. Ism after ism, yeah, the world keeps spinning. Mental prism, a new paradigm beginning. Ism after ism, ain't no losing, only winning. History's rhythm, the story they've been penning. Revolutions call, walls gonna fall. Radicalism, freedom's gleam, awaken dream, liberalism. New machines, arcing scenes, industrialism, iron and steam, a powerful stream, capitalism. Workers unite, a blazing light, socialism, power to the people, no more steeple. Communism, self-love's might, a human right, individualism. My own path, avoiding wrath, existentialism.
What did you think? I'd love your feedback, either on YouTube or just send me a message. Next, I teased this at the beginning. It is time for our fun fact segment. Since we just finished Thanksgiving and we are approaching college bowl season and pretty soon NFL playoffs, we're going to talk a little bit about football. I want to talk about an ism that is aggressive and patriotic and surprisingly connected to the gridiron. And shout out to my very good friend, Mr. Bill Hartley, who teaches APUSH in Ocala, Florida. He makes no secret of how much he admires the person we're about to talk about. The ism is jingoism, and this is described as aggressive, nationalistic, and patriotic expansion. And Theodore Roosevelt was a believer in this extreme form of expansion. TR was all about the strenuous life. He believed that for a nation to be strong, imperialism, jingoism, that its men had to be tough. Now, here is the fun fact. In the early 1900s, American football was incredibly violent. Like, people were actually dying on the field. And universities considered banning it, understandably so. But Roosevelt, being a jingoist who believed in toughness and combat preparation, didn't want the game banned. So he invited coaches to the White House and demanded that they reform the rules to make it safer so that the game could survive.
I love the ruggedness of football, but we have to make the game safer.
So if you enjoyed a football game this past Thanksgiving, or you're looking forward to the bowl games coming up soon, you can thank the jingoism of Teddy Roosevelt for saving the sport of football. And by the way, go Bills. We've covered how people rule and fight. Now let's look at how they think and create. On the AP European History exam, you will often see art, and it's beneficial to know the movements of the period to analyze the pieces of art correctly. So humanism was at the heartbeat of the Renaissance. It's an intellectual movement based on reading Greek and Roman literature, and it shifted focus from the divine to the human experience. In the early 19th century, Romanticism challenged the classics. It depicted emotional themes, including storms, dramatic landscapes, intense feelings. Now, Romanticism got a bit too dramatic for some, so realism followed. This was the desire to depict subject matter as realistically as possible, no sugarcoating. And by 1871 in France, we get visible brush strokes and a focus on light, a style known as Impressionism. And finally, we have the American contribution to the philosophical isms, Transcendentalism. This was a 19th century movement that emphasized individualism, self-reliance, and intuition. Key figures like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau believed that a connection with nature was a pathway to understanding the divine. But here are 3 reasons why this matters for your exam. Transcendentalism wasn't just about sitting quietly in the woods. It was the intellectual engine that powered massive social change. First, it sparked civil rights. Thoreau wrote an essay called Civil Disobedience after refusing to pay taxes to support the Mexican-American War and slavery. And that single essay on nonviolent resistance would later inspire Gandhi in India and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in America. Second, it fueled feminism. Another transcendentalist, Margaret Fuller, wrote Woman in the 19th Century, which is often considered the first major feminist work in the United States. And third, because transcendentalists believed in the divinity of the individual soul, they became some of the fiercest abolitionists of the era. So, if you went for a walk in the woods this Thanksgiving to escape your relatives, congratulations. You weren't just avoiding an argument, you were practicing the philosophy that helped to define American civil liberties. We covered a lot of ground today, from absolutism to jingoism, from realism to transcendentalism. Remember, when you are writing your DBQs or LEQs, using these terms correctly makes you sound like a sophisticated, complex historian. It shows your understanding of the systems behind the events. I have some great content coming up to help you finish the semester strong and kick off the new year. Mark your calendars for December 15th, AP Euro kids, because we're dropping Unit 5, and we're going to break down the conflicts and the changes of Period 2, including the French Revolution. Then, coming out of the winter break on January 5th, join me for a very special deep dive on the role of women in history. We're going to look at how women have shaped narratives across these isms that we discussed today and beyond. Thank you again for listening. I would sure appreciate it if you would follow me on the socials at AP History Help. Subscribe on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And tell a friend or your teacher, or if you are a teacher, tell your class about the podcast. After all, sharing is caring. And with that, this episode of the AP History Help podcast is now history.